So, you want to travel with your mini paints to go paint at a friend's house or a local game store. Well, I spent way too long trying to find the perfect storage solution for that, and I think I might be onto it. So, stick around. We're going to dive through a few different case options and what I went with for my use case. But let me tell you, some of these other options might actually be better for you. Let's roll that intro. What? We don't have an intro?
So the mission was simple: to find some cases to replace these stationary paint holders and still be usable on the desk and on the go.
We're gonna start with the first case, which is what I already had laying around and is the cheapest option at around $10 to $12, sometimes cheaper when they're on sale. I use these all throughout my workshop to store all sorts of bits and pieces, and I thought, well, maybe paints will be great for it. You get a couple options, as they have a deeper one for if you need to store even more paints. They kind of fit in the containers. Well, let's be honest, it's not great, but you can take the containers out and store them in there that way. There is a 3D printable system, I believe, for this. I think there's a spin-off of Gridfinity that works with these cases, but the single stacked ones, sadly, are not deep enough to store paint standing up. And a lot of the containers are kind of just odd sizes. You could separate your paints by type and still store a few in there, but it's a bit messy, and I think that defeats the purpose of this project, at least for me, of having a simple paint solution, like organization kit that I can take with me, whether it be going to a local game shop or if it's just me coming out to the workshop to film a YouTube video. So, next up is the Craftsman VersaStack system. This thing is honestly really good, and I wanted to like it just a little bit more, but for my use case, I don't think it's gonna work. It's a good case, nice solid sturdy plastic, easy to open drawers, dividers that we honestly are gonna take out and throw away for our use case. And it's modular, so if you grow past it, it's easy to just throw down the top handle, side latch, drop a new one on top, and then boom, you now have double the storage. This case comes in around $40. I think it might be a little bit more. I think I got this on sale to test it out. And it stores less than our third option, but if you got a second one, putting you around $80, you would probably have more storage room in here. It's also a little bit lighter than the metal case. This is actually a bit heavy, but it's manageable. And this, I mean, super easy to move with. The two drawers are nice, though they are a bit shallower than our other option here. But for at least normal Army Painter paints, and even some thicker, larger paint bottles like this Turbo Dork thin and medium paint, they fit in the system quite well. I do like this case, and I want to like it more. But for my needs, it just doesn't work, I think. The downsides compared to this toolbox is it's actually quite a bit deeper, and that's the downside on my desk is I have limited space, which means trying to slide out the drawers collided with things on my desk and ate up desk space. That said, for you this might be a good solution, but enough about the case, let's actually take a look at the inside. So we have these little dividers that we're just gonna get rid of right away. You could remove all these little dividers, slots for the dividers, so you could actually place in our 3D printed dividers for the paints. I 3D printed the parts to somewhat show you what it would look like, along with some images from the Reddit post. Now again, these plates aren't held in place at the moment, so things might move around a little bit, but to show the general idea of how paints would work with this case. Everything would fit in flush, and I do like that all the paints are at an angle. It does kind of make it easier to see what you have and pull them out. Another thing I want to show though is that these thicker, larger bottles. So I have a Turbo Dork thin paint, which is a bit of a thicker bottle. So I wanted to see if I lay it flat in there, would the case still close with the dividers underneath, as they are going to raise it up a little bit. And I'm still able to close the case. I think this is a good long-term solution though for a lot of people, as if you grow out of it, you can obviously just add a second case on top, which is a little bit harder to expand with this case. This thing generally goes for about $60, though it does go on sale from time to time, and Harbor Freight is notorious for having their coupons. And it comes in about 12.5 inches tall, 8.5 inches deep, and 20 inches wide, which is just enough to fit in the space with my desk. So let's take a look at the ways that you can store your paints inside this case. So first off, we have this overhead drawer, which is also the lock for the bottom drawers. This lid piece here is a bit deeper than the drawers, so you can store some extra pieces here. And what works well is the Gridfinity system. We're looking in at about 5 deep by about 12 long. You'll still be a little bit short. It gives you large paints that I might commonly go for that don't fit well down here. And then I'm also thinking it's great to store your wet palettes in here and extra brushes. After the lid, we have our drawers. So we have a couple systems I'm looking at right now for storing paints. This is just a little grid system I found on Printiverse, and it's pretty straightforward. You set it down, the bottle sits in place, and as you see, just shaking it around, it stays in place quite well. You can fit 3 of these together per row, which would allow you to hold up to 18 bottles. You can fit 2 rows in a shelf with actually some space in between to just loosely lay some bottles. Now, of course, my concern is the shake test. Bottles all stay in place. Next up is the Gridfinity system in a drawer. So while the top fits a 5 square deep piece, it does not fit in the bottom. On top of that, if we line up our Gridfinity, you are gonna have a bit of an extra gap space. But you can still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 squares long. So you're working with a 4 square by 10 square system. The good thing is the Army Painter bottles are only 2 squares deep, and you could have enough gap either in the back or the front to fit 1 more Army Painter. The other nice thing is you can stack Army paints on top of one set of a Gridfinity box and still be able to close the drawer, just barely. The downside of that, though, to keep in mind is that then you can't easily just grab a paint. You kind of have to flip through each box or try and pull out the Gridfinity system, which it's great that you can store more paints that way, but I do think it makes it a little bit harder to use. And if this box is not easy to use, I think it kind of defeats the purpose of a mobile paint station. Let's cover one of my hatreds of this case. And it's an easy fix, but something should be mentioned. The way these drawers lock is all based on this top layer. You see, the bottom drawer won't open right now. For the lock to engage on the drawers, they all have to be completely closed while the top is open. You see, now that the top's open, everything's unlocked. Unless you make sure everything is absolutely flush shut, the locking bar inside the case will not lock. The way around this is you open the drawers, then close the lid. Now you can open and close them freely, but you can't lock them without reopening the lid.
So after a night of 3D printing, I think I actually found the perfect solution for my use case. And what I love about 3D printing is being able to customize spaces and parts for storage. After testing some layouts, I realized I could make a flat wood base with the 3D printed parts attached to it, glued, and use this as an inlay. So if I do want to change this in the future, it's just replacing this part. So kind of making it somewhat modular for future use. So as you can see here, it just drops in. Then we can begin putting our paints in. And to just try and keep me on top of my storage organization, the goal here is to basically create a color organized system so you can quickly find the shade of color you are looking for. So we're gonna actually organize these by Roy G. Biv. So once all the inlays were put in, we then had the room at our top, which I used to store brushes, my paint shaker, and my wet palette, and just a few other extra tools. The other thing I want to touch up on is actually this cheap Harbor Freight case I actually ended up using when I didn't think I would. You see, this case actually ended up being perfect for my Turbo Dark paints. They're a bit larger than the Army Painter paints, which I normally use. So with these paints being a bit larger, I actually had to upscale the paint holder, STL, by about 25%. Once that was done, I was able to inlay a bunch of these if I flipped the middle row so they could kind of intersect. And there's just enough room to hold the entire Turbo Dork Turbo Shift paint set in this one of these cases with room for their thin and medium. The only thing you need to know though is this requires a wood inlay that is about 1/4 of an inch thick underneath so that the paints are pushed against the top, making sure they don't have too much room to flip around when they're inside the case. And with that, I think I have finally solved my paint storage solution for now. And it's made it easy to just grab and go with the paints or paint at my desk at home. The Craftsman VersaStack system I did really like, but it didn't fit my use cases, but hopefully the information I shared on it could be helpful for you. I love knowing how other people organize their tools, so feel free to share that knowledge in the comments. And until next time, take care.